Hi, and welcome to the Modern Persian Food Podcast. We are food bloggers,
Bita or Avian,
and Bita Nazim Kelly, and we're here to share with you the rich flavors and fresh ingredients of Persian cooking and how to incorporate them into today's modern lifestyles.
We're excited to introduce you to the flavors, tastes, and techniques we use, and also our own cultural stories and perspectives growing up in the U.S. in a Persian family. Thank you for joining us. Today, in episode number 46, we're talking about Persian meal planning. It's back to school time, back to work for many people. I'm here with the lovely Bita June. Hi, Bita.
Hi there. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. Ready to talk about back to school, back to work, meal planning, meal prep. It's a lot. I mean, food is so delicious. Every opportunity to eat, I'm thankful. But yeah, to plan it out so that you can actually eat in a leisurely way when you're eating at home and not like, oh my God, what am I going to eat? I'm starving, or everyone's starving. What can we do?
It's a very real topic. Everyone wants to get organized. And I feel like something about this time of year, even whether you're in school or you have kids that are in school or not, it just feels like a time to kind of get things organized and start getting into a routine.
Especially with like going back to school and a lot of offices are opening back up and going back to work. It's kind of like a great opportunity to get a refresher on how you can eat healthy and incorporate Persian flavors into your calendar.
Right? In the traditional old days, making a Persian meal, could take all day, half the day, the chopping and the cooking and the pot going on the stove. And in real life, right, you might have a half an hour or an hour on a weeknight, hungry people, and it's all too easy to dial up for takeout or delivery. So
yeah,
we're hoping that we'll have tips and tricks for you to be able to make this happen on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So Bita, tell us, what are some of the biggest things that you consider when you're meal planning? And you do this not only in your own family, but you teach people and coach people. So you, I'm sure, have a lot of really good things to say about how we can kind of plan better for our weekly meals.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I think for me personally, what I use the most is just a weekly meal planner. I print it out old school, and it's got the meals of the day and each day of the week. And I will sit down on Sunday and try to think. Basically, after I've written out what I'd like to do for the week for meals, then the next step is to come up with the grocery list, right? You need the supplies to make it happen. So plan and then make the grocery list and shop. And then I'm ready to start cooking and prepping. My biggest tool is definitely the weekly meal plan. How about you? What helps you the most?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. Planning it out is so important. I think that for the days that I do plan it out, like if I plan out like a few days worth of like, okay, we're going to eat this on this night and we're going to eat this and this is like what I'm going to have for lunch, or these are the little like lunch kits I'm going to make. If I plan it out, it's so much easier. Then I could kind of just, all right, this is what's going on. And I kind of hit the ground running versus at the time that I need to eat, try to do it then. It's not as efficient. It's not as effective when I'm like doing it last minute. So I think that to your point, planning it out is like super important. And I try to do that as much as I can. I have like a pretty like crude piece of paper that I basically get a fresh piece of paper like each week and divide it out by day. And it's really just notes that I make because I also like to use the stuff that I have. And I think one big thing for me when I'm trying to like meal plan and prep and just like get food organized is cooking once, but using whatever I'm cooking more than one time. So maybe making a bigger portion of something, like roast vegetables. If I have the pan space or whatever, I'll roast extra vegetables. I don't necessarily roast just enough vegetables just for like two people. I like to like do a whole sheet pan. I like to do as much as I can, portion out how much you're going to eat for that meal or whatever you're going to do. And then I'll make another recipe with the other half. So I think that that's like one big thing. And I think for Persian cooking, how that's relevant is like if you're going to batch cook like a chicken, I'm going to roast a chicken and then I'm going to use that throughout the week in different executions. Like I could, just have like chicken and rice one night, put some like little barberries with some like saffron and slivered almonds on it and have that as be like zirish polo with chicken for like one night. And then you could use another part of the chicken the next day or something, and you can make like a salad olivier with it or something like that. And it's just basically using your resources and using them in different ways is helpful for me to try to just get ahead of it a little bit. And then based on that, then I know, okay, I have roasted vegetables. So what can I make over the next like day or two using those vegetables? If I go into it with the approach of it's like fun and like a game, I get further along with it. But that's definitely a big thing that I do.
I think that batch cooking is a great idea. I sort of think around, how do I have a balanced meal? Mm-hmm. And then I think about the components to a healthy, balanced meal. And then I start cooking around that. So, for example, if I'm planning for the week, and I know that I need to have lean protein in a balanced meal, like you said, I'll cook enough chicken, batch cook the chicken, or we do a lot of ground turkey. I'll batch cook the ground turkey, and I'll use sort of mild spices so that they can be used in different dishes. Mm-hmm. So usually start with the base of the grilled onions. I like garlic a lot. I'll usually use garlic. And then, you talked about chicken. I might use like a little bit of turmeric, some milder spices so that I can roll that over. So if I'm doing ground turkey and I keep the spices really basic, I can use it on Taco Tuesday, but then I can also add the spices and sauces to make it work in, for example, lubia polo or something else that might call for a little bit of ground meat. So then if I also want to have my healthy balanced plate and have an ancient grain in there, that might be rice, 100% rice, right? So I probably make rice fresh more often than batch cooking rice. But I guess in terms of planning, just make sure you have it, enough of it.
Yeah, when it comes to rice, I definitely love having fresh rice and a fresh tahdig when I want to eat it. But in reality, I don't always eat it like that. It'll start off like that. And then with the leftovers, it's easy as like a second meal, like as a lunch the next day or something like that, to just have like the rice to go. And then if I have some sort of protein or some sort of vegetables on the side, then it's really easy to kind of whip it up and get that delicious like second round of food with the rice. So I'll sometimes batch my rice too, like cook enough that I could use it like 1 or 2 times in the week and do like fried rice or do something Persian with it.
Exactly. Yeah. If I happen to have leftover rice and I've made too much rice, I will either make tahine, which is the baked Persian chicken and rice casserole that has eggs and yogurt and saffron, and bake it down, and that's delicious. And then the other thing is, like you said, it works great for a stir fry.
Yeah.
And that's really easy too. Take your leftover rice, get some vegetables in there. Maybe I'll throw an egg for protein and some Asian sauces and spices and turn that leftover rice into a complete meal. So do you do anything with regards to herbs or vegetables in advance?
Yeah, so my herbs, I like to get my herbs washed and cleaned, and I like to have those ready to go because it's just so much easier for me to incorporate fresh herbs if they're ready. I can like stick them into a little sandwich, have it with a little nuno paneer, or I love to just have them as garnish and like, eat it on the side. Persian cooking, a lot of times you have a platter of sabzi khordan, so fresh herbs on the side that you eat with like the rich stews and things like that. So I love just having fresh herbs around. I think one of my biggest meal prep things when I'm like kind of like cooking for the week or meal prepping on the weekend on Sundays, I don't always do it on Sundays. I'm pretty much one anytime I get a chance. So sometimes I'm doing meal prep like on Thursday, getting ready for the weekend sometimes. But whenever I am doing that, there's a few things I make just as like a foundation of my meal plan. And one of that is usually kuku. Like a kuku sabzi. So kuku is a big dish for me and my family. I love having kuku for like breakfast, or if I want to put it like in a pita or some lavash or a tortilla later and make a little wrap with it with some radishes or something. I love doing that. And I'll do kuku sabzi with like fresh herbs or different vegetables or with potato. And I love that it has eggs in there, turmeric in there, a little bit of flour. That's like one of my favorite things to make is kuku.
That's so awesome because it's like a well-balanced thing. It's got the protein in the eggs and the herbs and the vegetables, and it keeps well, right?
I'll eat that for like 3 days for sure.
And for those who don't know what it is, it's almost like a quiche or a frittata.
Yeah, exactly. I typically cook it in the pan. You could cook it in the oven and bake it in either the little muffin tins or in a sheet pan. You just feel good eating it because it's so full of vegetables and herbs. Do you have any favorite go-to things that when you meal prep?
I think Probably soups. Actually, Persian food, the stews are sort of like a hearty soup that you eat with rice. So I think any Persian stew, a khoresh, or soup is really nice to make big portions and to batch cook and to enjoy for several days. A lot of times the spices soak in and it even tastes better a day or two later. So
That's a good point.
yeah, I would say soups. My favorite soups probably are, gosh, I love anything with the lentils. I really like abgusht. Ash reshte really hits the spot, the noodle and bean soup. And in the khoresh category, probably my favorites are like qeymeh.
Yeah.
The yellow split pea stew is probably the one that I love the most. How about you in terms of Persian?
Yeah, I mean, all of those that you just said are so delicious. I love them. Like khorshe badem jun, the eggplant stew that's tomato based and sometimes has the sour gure, the sour grapes on it. That's a big favorite. And, you know, like something like that, you don't have to make it all at once. You can roast your eggplant or fry your eggplant like a day before, you know, when you have the time to like batch cook or like meal plan or meal prep, like, you know, as you're doing those things, you could just get your eggplant ready. And then the night that you want to serve it, you use those eggplant and you kind of pull the sauce together. I think shortcuts like that, where you don't have to make everything at that moment, it's one of the important things I think that making Persian food more accessible during the week in traditional ways that people would be cooking all day and letting the sauces simmer. And in reality, we can't make that happen. So if that means that I need to cook my eggplant the day before when I have time, and yet the next night then I can enjoy a khorshe badem jun and just make the rice and just pull the sauce together, I think that's awesome. Like, more power to you.
Totally.
Yeah, making use of the time that you have to kind of fit in when you're going to be doing some of those batch cooking.
Yeah, I have a question for you, and I think we'll just use this as our Ask the Beats. As you know, we have a segment at the end of our episodes where Bita, June, and I take in questions from our listeners, a lot of times coming through Instagram. But I want to ask you a question,
Sure.
Bita, June.
Go for it.
My question is, what would you say is your biggest challenge in terms of this subject of meal prep and preparing a Persian dish, in terms of cooking Persian food on a weeknight when you're busy? Which component of making a Persian meal is the most challenging to you? And I can answer it too if you want.
Yeah. I guess I have a two-part answer. One is really just like finding the time to be able to pull it together without having to eat like super late at night. Start something and then finish it and eat it that night. It may take like a few hours for me to make Persian food. So I think finding just the time to do it is the biggest challenge for me. And then the second challenge of when I'm cooking Persian food is actually when I have multiple components, is having everything ready at the same time. So when you want to kind of serve dinner or serve your Persian meal, it's like having the rice and the tahdig perfect, and then having the stew all ready to go. And if you have your, you know, sides of like a mastokhiyar, a cucumber and yogurt, and just all of the different components that go into it, having everything ready at the same time and served hot, that's also another challenge, sometimes more so when I'm entertaining.
Yeah, so true.
What about you?
For me, it's chopping. I don't know why, if I'm just lazy about chopping, or maybe I need to take a knife skills class or something. But
Sure.
I feel like with Persian food, there's so much chopping. You know, for example, in mastakhiyar, you got to chop the cucumbers all small, or in salad shirazi,
Yeah.
you got to chop the cucumbers, you got to chop your onions, you got to chop your tomatoes. And for example, lubia polo, you got to chop your green beans.
Yep, chop your onions. Yep.
Chop the onions, right. So I think that in terms of what we're talking about with meal prep, if you do plan and think ahead, you can do some of that. You can chop your vegetables in advance. I have a chopping tool. It's basically like a guillotine. Got little tiny squares. It will work for cucumbers. It will work for onions. It doesn't work great for tomatoes because they just mush in there.
Smush, yeah.
And I like to use little itty bitty tomatoes for my Persian salads because I feel like they hold their shape. You know, they have more skin around them and they're often sweeter. I just like little cherry tomatoes.
Yeah.
So I just sit there and cut up my little tiny tomatoes. So for me, it's chopping. And I have a lazy cheat for lubia polo, which is not going to be as delicious, but sometimes I'll just buy canned green beans that are already cut, or even like pre-frozen chopped green beans to cut down on chopping time.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great tips. Sometimes we, for myself, and I've seen it for others, have the feeling that if you're going to be cooking Persian food, you need to make all of it from scratch yourself. And I think that that is silly to think that, at least me and my lifestyle, and when, as we're going back to work and we're in the office and when we have everyone going back to school, that's just not going to be reality. Like if I want to do that, like I'm just going to have to be like a chef and be the household chef as opposed to the other roles that I have. So I think utilizing store-bought ingredients that are prepped and ready to go. There's nothing wrong with that. If that works within your budget to do that. Sometimes those are a little bit more expensive, sometimes not. I like to get a can of beans, of great organic cannellini beans, or I love beans in salads and ash rishte. I could pull together an ash rishte really quickly with like canned beans. So, that's something that's prepared. I'll sometimes get lentils like in packages in the produce section. Also like cooked beets. I love pulling together like a masta labu or something like that, grating some store-bought already cooked beets and just using stuff that's already prepared. I think that that's definitely an option, like a way to like get around having to make everything from scratch yourself.
Totally. And I was going to talk about pre-cooking and boiling hard-boiled eggs for making salad olivier. And also you could pre-cook potatoes, but you could also, I've seen hard-boiled eggs sold, they're not hard to make, but you could save a step.
Right. Absolutely.
I love that point. And I use canned beans all the time as well. Chickpeas, garbanzo beans.
Mm-hmm. I know in your neck of the woods, there's more Persian restaurants. There's a few here in San Francisco too. But, supporting our local Persian restaurants is definitely a great way to go. And you know what? When you get a kebab platter, I can't eat. I mean, I can, but I don't need to eat a whole serving all to myself. Like that could easily be lunch the next day. Either have it with rice or make it like a little kebab wrap. They have really great sides. So another way is not necessarily cooking yourself, but, supporting our local Persian restaurants is another great way to incorporate those flavors.
Absolutely. We do a lot of that too. You can do partial. Like you said, you order kebab. We're doing that today. Order kebab. I'll make the rice, and then the part that I don't love doing, the chopping, I actually really like the salad shirazi from our Persian market.
Yep.
And I love the limey, lemony dressing. And I will just get that. And nobody will know the difference. And I'll just put it in a big, beautiful bowl. And I've saved myself the grief of chopping. And we're supporting the restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. So these, I think, are really great ways to kind of get back into the groove of packing lunches and meal planning for the week or for just the next few days. Great little tips. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Bita, for taking the time.
Yeah, I hope you all got a little something out of that and that you feel fueled to take on this season. Thank you, Bita June. Until next time.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Modern Persian Food Podcast with Bita and Beata. Thanks for spending time with us. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider telling a friend or giving us a good rating. You can subscribe to our show for free on your favorite podcasting app or find us online at modernpersianfood.com or on Instagram for the recipes and information we talked about today. We'd love to hear your thoughts and see you next time.